Fine. So this is a continuation of our yesterday's class, Friday's class about the controls in ASP.NET. Okay. So let's get started. So we discussed the label and text box controls, right? Good. So now the third important control is your button control. So have you ever seen a button control? Maybe when you try logging into Gmail or any other mail, you will see a button called as submit or login at the bottom, right? Once you type in your user ID and password, you'll click on it, right? So this is the control which will trigger a action or a server side code call. Okay, if you want to send something to the server, you'll use your submit control, sorry, your button control. Fine. And basically there are three different types of button control. So button is the very basic control, but there are two other types of controls, button controls as well, used in your ASP.NET. Fine. So the first and foremost one, or the basic one, is your button control. If you see, there is an image here. So this image, something like a image shown here. So a basic button control is a button control with text enclosed in a rectangle. Okay, so if you see, this rectangle can be bordered, or it may not be bordered, or it can be solid, or it can be transparent, or anything, but it's a rectangle with text enclosed in it. Making sense? Sometimes there can be a different type of control called as a image button control, where the button would be displayed as an image. Okay, something like download button. Are you able to see this? So you need some image like your downside arrow, which says that if you want to download something, you can click on this. Okay, still the function remains the same. So the function performed by both of them remains the same. Okay, but the way in which you display them changes. Making sense? Good. A third type of control is called as your link button. Okay, so if you want to display the text as a link, sometimes you may want to display it as a hyperlink, or sometimes you may want to perform some action on click of that link, anything. Okay, but you wanted just to focus on a text of the button, but you don't want to display any other shape or image apart from that. So just a text which is displayed differently to look like a link. Making sense? So this image here is your link button. Fine. Good. So these are the three different types of buttons, and again there are multiple properties associated with your buttons. Okay, so what are the different properties we have? The basic property, as we understood earlier, is your text property. So for whatever control it might be, whether it is your button or whether it is your list item, or whether it is your label or text box, whatever it is, text means the text you wanted to display on the control, right? So if you want to display submit, you can assign submit to the text property, or whatever you want to display on the button, it will be displayed as text. Making sense? Good. And again, if you want to display the button as an image button, you'll have to tell where the image is located, right? You'll have to show the image. You'll have to give some image as a source, right? So you'll have something called as image URL property, which tags the image which you have created somewhere else and assigns it as a source to your button. Understood? Good. Fine. Have you ever seen a image? Have you ever seen a image which is kind of broken, or a file broken kind of image on any website? I'll show you. Okay, I'll show you. Let me get it. Okay, something like this. Have you ever seen this kind of images on some websites? Instead of displaying images, you might see something like this on few websites sometimes, right? Good. So when will this happen? Think that you have you have assigned some image as a source to this button or some image. Okay, so you wanted to display some image and you have specified the image source as well, right? But somehow after that somebody has deleted the image from that location, or the folder in which uh, the image has been placed doesn't have access from outside. Okay, something like that. So the image is not there or it is not accessible. Making sense? Yeah, sometimes it doesn't support also, but that case we are not worried about. That is browser's fault. Okay, but still, if it is not available or not accessible or not there in that particular location, then you will see images of that kind, right? Will it look good to show some image like that instead of showing your instead of showing the image which you intended to show? It doesn't make sense, right? So it will not look good. So in that case, what you will do, instead of displaying that broken image, you might be wanting to display some text, static text instead of that image, right? Will it make more sense? One second please, let me get my charger. Will it make more sense instead of displaying a broken image file? Yes, right, obviously. So in that case, there is a property associated with your image button which says when the image is not available. Okay, please don't display a broken image file, but instead you can display this text. Like if you wanted to display a download button, you got a download button, right? We have seen in the previous image. So here you have a download button, but the download button was not available. So instead you can show a normal download text, right? Normal text which says download. So this text which gets displayed when the image is not available is called as alternate text. Making sense? Understood the purpose of the property called as alternate text? Good. So the next important property associated with your button is your causes validation property. Do you know what is a validation by any chance? We discussed it in our previous class. Prakriti, do you remember? No problem, I can repeat it. So think that there is a text box which needs to accept only numbers. Okay, the text box has to display salaries. Okay, so somebody starts typing in A B C D E F and he hits a submit. So the A B C D E F will be sent to the database instead of salary. So is it acceptable? No, right? So obviously for that purpose, before making a call to the server, local or client side validations occur. Okay, you can assign client side validations which will restrict the call from being sent to the server and uh, mm, display some error on the user interface for the user to understand that something has gone wrong, right? So this way of displaying some error message when some unintended input is given to the server, when the user is trying to send some unintended input to the server, then if you are trying to restrict the server call and throw some error on the user interface, then that is called as validation. Making sense? So we understood that the purpose of your button is to make some call to the server or send some input to the server, right? So in this case, you might be wanting to fire some validation or cause some validation on the button click when when some erroneous input is given, right? So your causes validation property will do the same. So it will say that hello boss, you are not the input which you have given is not the intended input for the given field, so please correct it. Making sense? Good. So we have already looked at it earlier. Just let me show you. When we were looking at a text box control, we found that there is some very basic level validation, right? So for your quick reference, we can look at it. Fine, I don't think we have discussed it yet. Okay, fine. We'll discuss it later when we are doing the practice. So you understood what is validation at least, right? We'll look at it in practice when we are doing it. Okay, good. So the next important property associated with a button is sometimes you might want to just use the button to redirect the user to some other page. Fine. Something like you wanted to have some button on your control and think that you are on the home page and you wanted to have some links or buttons to some other pages like your contact page or your about page or some other page like that. So in that case you can add buttons, and the mere purpose of these buttons is to redirect you to some other page, right? So in this case, you can add or you can use some property called as postback URL. What this will do, we understood what is postback, right? What is postback? Making a call to the server, requesting for something, right? Requesting for some page. No, it's not calling the new browser site. Okay, I think you did not go through the recordings for the classes which you missed. We discussed some class called as page lifecycle. Okay, so that is very important, and we have discussed some other class as one other topic called as state management. Okay, go through them, they are very important. Okay, so I have already posted the videos there, please go through them. And coming back to postback, so usually postback means making call to the page from the page where you are located. Okay, so for example, think that you are on home page and you are requesting for the home page again. Okay, then that is a postback. Understood? So in this case, however, this I don't know why they have named this as postback URL, but here this might be different. Okay, here postback means you may or may not be calling the same page. Okay, but you might be trying to redirect the user to some other page or the same page. You are trying to make some redirection on click of that button. Okay, so if you are trying to send him to google.com, okay, then postback URL would be google.com. Okay, if you are trying to send him to yahoo.com, then the postback URL would be yahoo.com. Making sense? Understood what is the purpose of property called as postback URL? Good. Sai Krishna, is it understood? Good. And there are two other controls called as here checkbox and radio button controls. Fine. So these are used for making selections. Have you ever looked at any application form or any other form which says please fill in the details, and under that select the appropriate gender? Okay, and there will be two options, male and female. Okay, you will be checking the appropriate value, right? Have you ever come across that? So these the square shaped box where you will be making a tick to say that this is the appropriate input, that checkbox or that squared box under which you will make a tick or check, that is called as checkbox. Fine. And a control which looks similar to that in ASP.NET is called as a checkbox, right? Good. So This checkbox has two important properties associated with it called as text and checked. Okay, so maybe when you are asking them to check, so you should say next to this checkbox, or if you check this checkbox, what is the value you will be selecting, right? So you might be selecting male or you might be selecting female. So the text associated with the text box would be displayed using the property called as text, right? And what is checked property? Checked property is a boolean property. Okay, if you have checked it, the value would be true. Fine. And if you have not checked it, the value will be false. And this will tell you whether you have made a selection or you have not made a selection. Making sense? Good. And the next important control is your radio button control. What is a radio button? This is called as radio button because maybe have you ever seen a old radio? Yes, old radio will have circled buttons and you will push it, right? Maybe in the primitive versions of TVs also we used to see that. So if you push it, it will be on, and again if you push it, it will be off, right? Have you ever seen that? Something good, something which looks like this actually. Can be something like this. And this is a selection. Okay, if you push it again, it will be off. Fine. So already, I have a question for you. Already we have a control called as checkbox, which is used for making selection, right? Then what is the purpose of radio button? The difference between both of them, they have a very minor difference between both of them. Once you select the radio button, it can't be deselected. Okay, but once you make a check in the checkbox, you can uncheck it. Making sense? Good. Now let's try to look at these 4 or 5 controls first, and after that we'll come back. Let me add a button. What are the mandatory properties associated with any controls? Prakriti, ID. You'll have to give a ID, right? btn test. Fine. And what else? Run it, right? Run it equal to server. We discussed it in our last class, right? Good. And just for your sake, Sai Krishna, okay, run it equal to server is mandatory for all ASP.NET controls. Okay, and again on your ASP.NET page or ASP page, you can also use HTML controls. Fine. I missed something, it seems. Somebody seems to have a question. 1 second. Test is name if button which gets no, it's not the name. Okay, it's identifier. Okay, every control should have identifier, right? Every student in a class will have his student ID, right? Similar to that. It's the unique name used for identifying the control. Got it? Fine. Again, coming back to your input. Okay, input HTML control which we have used. I have given it a name HTMLC. Okay, and I just named it that way. Okay, and as we understood earlier, every ASPX page will have a .cs page associated with it. which holds the server side code. So now HTML-C should be accessible here, right? Are you able to access it? It's throwing error, right? But coming to our button control, it will get accessible. You are able to access it, right? You are able to add all the properties and all, right? However, you are unable to access the HTML control, right? Why were you unable to do that? Okay, because by default, if you don't mention that it should be accessible on the server side, if you don't add run it equal to server, the control will not be accessible. Okay, now when I added run it equal to server, it will automatically get detected, right? Got it? Run it equal to server says that it should be accessible from the server side code also. Fine. However, for your ASP.NET based controls, it is mandatory that run it equal to server should be mentioned. Okay, if I remove it, it will throw a error. Okay, are you able to see the error? It says run it equal to server is missing. So it's mandatory. Fine. Now text. Okay, text equal to submit. Fine. Let's see how it gets displayed. Are you able to see the submit button here? And if you see, whenever I click the submit button, a call is being made to the server. If you see, the page is getting refreshed. Are you able to observe that? Good. So that's the purpose of your button. Button is used to make a call to the server, right? And again, the basic properties which we have looked at in our previous class with label and button, most of them they will work. Back color equal to gray. Okay, and which will display a gray background. Forecolor equal to dark blue. Fine, and I'm refreshing the page. Did it get changed? Good. So similarly, you can say font bold equal to true, equal to true, font size equal to extra large, and font italic equal to true. Fine. So it will increase the font size, it will make it italic, and it will make it bold. Got it? Good. And again, the button has a event associated with it called as click event. Fine. When you are clicking a button, something can happen, right? So you might want to make some changes to the page based on the button click. Like you might want to take the inputs from all the text boxes and validate them from the database level inputs, and you can say whether the user needs to be navigated to the next page or not, something like that, right? So those can be done using the click property, on click event. Fine. And as we understood earlier, every event has a handler associated with it, right? What is a handler? Handler is a method. Handler is a method which gets called when your click happens or when some event happens, right? So it will ask you whether you want to add a new event. Okay, I will add a new event. Okay, and if you see, a new event handler got added, right? So this is the method name. Okay, if you go to the page, okay, why I'll, this is running, so you can't, when the application is running, you can't change the CS file. Okay, that's the reason why it did not get added on the CS page. But now if I stop the application and again when I start running it, okay, when I start adding the event again, you will see that a new event handler got added, right? Good. Now let's spend some time in understanding the event handler here. Okay, so if you see, the event handler method which got created, it has two important properties associated with it, right? One is object sender and other one is event args, right? Sai Krishna, are you there? Good. Again, when we discussed our page life cycle, we understood that every page has multiple events associated with it, right? Page load, page init, page render, right? So all of them, they have some handlers associated with it, right? You can create a handler associated with your page level events or button level events or control level events, or any event can have a handler associated with it, right? And most of them, if you see, even the page level event handler called as page load has the same attributes or same parameters called as sender and event args e, right? So now let's try to understand what is sender. Okay, sender is the control which has sent it, or sender is the object which has triggered this event. Okay, so for your page level event, sender will be page, right? Got it? And for your button or control level events, the sender would be the appropriate control. Here in our case, it would be the button. Fine. So now, just for your understanding, let me add some code, and on click of this button, I wanted to, okay, there is a label called as label test which has some text associated with it, or there is a text box called as txt test, and I wanted to hide this text box. Okay, so on click of that button, I'll say visible equal to text box visible equal to false, right? So let me hit a breakpoint here. If you want to check in the debug mode, okay, when you locally, if you want to check the flow of your application, or if you want to validate some properties in your local code, you can hit something called as breakpoint. Are you able to see the red color point mark here? This is called as breakpoint. What will this do? It will stop your code flow once it reaches this point, so that you can check any values or any local code flow in your local machine, okay, in the debug mode. Fine. So now on click of that button, it will stop at that breakpoint, and we'll see what is the object and sender properties. So on click of this button, this text box should be made invisible. So it got stopped here, right? So let's see what is the sender. What is the sender here? for just showing you what is the sender here. Okay, what is the sender? It's a text box control. It's a web control, right? And the text property associated with it is submit. Got it? Making sense or not? So maybe we can call the method called as get type, which will tell you what is the type of it. What is the type of it? Button. System.web.ui.webcontrols.button. Making sense? So the control which triggered the event will be sent as a sender. Making sense or not? And now, what are event args? The control would be sending some arguments or some inputs along with it. Okay, but here it did not send any event args because there are no event args or no arguments associated with it. If they had been there, it would have sent the event arguments or parameters in the event args property, right? Good. So now the text box should be made invisible. Okay, so are you able to see the text box now? It went out, right? Are you able to see the text box? Where is it? There used to be a very big text box next to this label, right? We have disabled it, or sorry, we have made it invisible. Okay, let me show you again. So this is the text box, right? We have made it invisible on click of the submit. Yes or no? Are you understanding? Good. So those are the important properties associated with your button. Fine. Now we understood that there are multiple types of buttons, three different types of buttons called as your image button, link button, and your normal button, right? So how will we add a link button or image button? Let's see what is image button first. So let me add an image to my project first so that I can give some source URL to the image button. Okay, how will I add that? I'll right click on the project, I'll click on add, and I'll select existing item, and I'll select some image existing in my local page. Okay, so I'll add this image as the image for your link button, sorry, image button. So I have selected this image. So now download.jpg is the image which I have in my local code. Now let me add a image button. Okay, ASP image button. ID equal to img. Okay, btn test. Okay, I'm giving some unique name to it. Fine. And what is the important property which we have discussed associated with your image button? Image URL, right? Good. And I'll select the download.jpg. Fine. And now if I run it, that image should be displayed as a button. Sorry, that button should be displayed as an image. Right? Are you able to see the image here? And if you see, if I click on it, a post back happens again, page gets refreshed, right? Everything is same except that the button gets displayed as an image. Okay, and let me add in a click event associated with it. Okay. Fine. And maybe I can do the same thing. I can add the same code in this event handler also. Okay, I just wanted to make this text box invisible. So if I hit on this image, text box should go, right? Good. So now the third type of button we have is your link button. Link button, run it equal to server and id equal to lnkbtn test. Okay, and link button should have a text associated with it. So I'll say click me. Shit, what happened? Click me and back color. Okay, I don't want any back color. Fore color is equal to dark blue. Font size equal to large. Fine. And I'll run it and see how my link button looks like. Are you able to see this button here? And again, if you see, the page gets refreshed again. So the purpose is almost same. Okay, the only difference is how it gets displayed, how the button gets displayed. Making sense? Good. Now let's, somebody seems to have a question. Sai Krishna, is it clear? So we can put those buttons as a desired place. Yeah, you can do it. You can put it wherever you want. Let me show you. Usually you will use a table control for that purpose. We'll see that when we are looking at our page creation. Okay, but just let me show you how your table control looks like. Fine. So maybe let me start putting in each one of them inside one row or a column. Fine. Got it? You can arrange them based on where you want to put them in. Fine. If you want to push it here, you will select the appropriate row and column and you will put it there. Got it? Good. Now let's come back to our topic and we'll add a checkbox control. Okay, checkbox control. I will say text equal to mail. Net equal to server and id equal to chk test m. Fine. And now let me remove this bullshit buttons, and I don't want this text box also. I don't want to pollute my page. Okay, so now if I load the page, you'll see a text box. No, actually my laptop is running on ICU. Okay, so it's almost in the verge of damage. Okay, so what my son did, okay, I have a 1.5-year-old son. Okay, I left the laptop somewhere. He sat down on the hinge. Okay, so the display got broken. So somehow I got it. Warranty got over, so somehow I got it. I ordered it on eBay and I repaired it manually. And once I have repaired it, he clicked on power button and he pulled it out. Again I ordered power button and it started running. And now since past 3 days, it says that battery is on the verge of exhaustion. Okay, so I should order a new battery. So instead I thought it would be better to buy a new laptop for Thanksgiving. That's what. So I'm running it. I have to keep it charged throughout the day. Okay, whenever I want to use it I should keep it charged, otherwise it's not working. Fine. Are you able to see the male and female checkboxes here? However, there is a issue with them. A person can check both of them. Okay, so we'll have to fix this. I'll tell you how to fix it a bit later. Fine. Now, again, you might want to get the input or which radio button has been checked, or get the text associated with it, or do something like uh, update the checkbox. Okay, let's do something. Okay, before getting into the permanent solution, okay, what I'll do, I want to fix that. I want to make them mutually exclusive. Okay, I have a on check changed event associated with it. Fine, with the checkbox. So this gets raised when the checkbox gets checked or
gets unchecked, okay, when the check gets changed. Okay, so on this control, what I would like to do, if okay, so I'm getting the sender and I'm converting it to checkbox, and what I'm trying to do, dot text dot equals of mail dot to upper. Fine, got it. I'm checking whether the mail text box is checked, and what I'll do, chk female dot mm, 1 second, and fine, I'm checking if the selected checkbox is the mail checkbox and it is selected. Fine, or what I can do, I can remove it from here. Again, if I would say equal to false. Fine, so what did I do here? So I am checking here, I am checking if the selected checkbox is the mail checkbox. So the checkbox which raise the event, okay, whose selection is changed is the male checkbox, then I'll check. If the male checkbox is checked, I'll make the female checkbox false. If the male checkbox got unchecked, I'll make the female checkbox checked. Fine, understood? Let's see how it works. Got it or not? Here they should be mutually exclusive, right? So is it working or not? No, why is it not working? There is a property associated with them, which I'll tell you. Okay, so I should discuss one property associated with them called as auto postback equal to true. Fine. By default, this property will be false for checkbox. Okay, so I should make that true. Okay, so that a server code gets called. Okay, for the server code to get called, a call should be made to the server, right? So by default, this property would be off on your checkbox. Fine. Fine. Got it? So the another important property associated with your checkbox is auto post back. Making sense? Yes or no? Good. Again, let's look at one other important control called as radio button. Okay, I'll show you how the radio button looks like. Select. Okay, run at equal to server. Okay, I'll show you the difference between both of them. So this is a radio button. Once I have selected it, even if I click on it, it doesn't get deselected. Making sense? However, once I check my checkbox, I can go ahead and uncheck it. That's the difference between both of them. Apart from that, they are almost same. Fine? Understood? Good. Can we extend the class for 15 more minutes? So now let's move on. Now there are some other type of controls called as your list controls. Fine. If you want to display more than one value on a control, okay, now you are able to display only one value on your label, okay, only one value on your text box, okay, or only one value on your checkbox or radio button, right? However, you wanted to display a set of values on a given control, then that control can be called as your list control. There are multiple types of list controls. However, any control which can display more than one value is called as a list control. Making sense? Good. And again, each and every value or every element associated with your list control is called as a list item. Fine. So one list control can have 10 items, 20 items, 100 items, any number of items. Fine. And each and every individual item is called as a list item. Making sense? Good. So each list item has three important properties associated with it: text, value, and selected. Fine. Text, as we have been discussing pertaining to each and every control, here also the text remains same. So the text which gets displayed associated with that particular item on the screen is called as a is represented using the text property. Fine. Good. Now value is something different again. Okay, let me explain. It is again, it holds the text property. Okay, it will also hold some text associated with that particular item, but let's try to understand why we needed two different properties called as text and value associated with the item. Fine. Good. So think that there are 10 students in my class. Fine. I wanted to display a item associated with all the 10 students in the list control. Fine. I wanted to display all of them together. Fine. And so this control displays 10 items, and these 10 items are associated with my 10 students, and I can select any one of the item in a given point of time. Fine. Any one student can be selected on the control. Fine. So think that there are two people or two students in my class with a name called as Sai Krishna, right? So if I have only one property associated with that given list item, then I can't differentiate which Sai Krishna got selected, right? So now what I can do instead, I can display the Sai Krishna with his name as text, and each and every student will have a identifier or ID associated with him, right? So I'll have one Sai Krishna with ID 3 and other with ID 7. So on selecting a given student, if that is Sai Krishna, I'll try to differentiate by using the ID, right? Good. So that's the purpose of having two different properties called as text and value. Now, the third important property is called as selected property. Fine. What is selected property? It's a true or false property. Again, if the value is selected, it will be true. If the value is not selected, it will be false. Got it? Understood or not? Now, the list controls, all of them, they have certain properties associated with them. Okay, let's understand what are the properties associated with the list control. Okay, and the properties which we have looked at in the previous slide are associated with each item in the list. Now this is for the parent control. Fine, understood? Is it clear or do you have a confusion? Good. So now the items property associated with the list control will display the collection of list items. Fine, it will give you the collection of list items associated with the control. So we understood that one list control can have more than one list items in it, right? So now here list item collection will say how many controls are all, it will give you the group of all the item controls associated with the list box or any list control, right? If you have 100 items, it will display 100 items as list item array. Fine. Good. Now selected index. So selected index will tell you the item at what position got selected. So if there are 100 items which are displayed in a sequence, then it will tell you what is the item, what is the position number associated with the item which got selected. Okay, third item got selected, or fourth item got selected, or 10th item or 100th item got selected. It will give you the index associated with the selected item. Index is the position at which the item is placed. Fine. Good. Selected value, this will give you the value property associated with the item which got selected. Fine, we understood that there is a value property associated with the list item, right? So this will tell you what is the value associated with the selected item. Good. The next important property associated with your list control is selection mode. Okay, it can be two different modes. One is single selection, other one is multiple selection. So this control might allow if the control allows multiple selection, you can select multiple items also, right? So it will tell you what mode should be allowed. However, you should understand that many of the list controls allows only one selection. But if the item or the list control allows multiple selection, you can specify whether you want to turn it on or off using the selection mode. Fine. Good. There are few other things. So there is a continuation of the list item controls. So we'll look at them in our next class. Okay, so did we get a understanding of the basic controls which we have in ASP.NET? There are few more controls to discuss, but for now, whatever we have discussed, are you okay with them? Good. By tomorrow, can you practice by creating one page in your ASP, create a project, add a page to it, and practice all the controls which we have looked at till now. Can we do it? And can you send me a screenshot by tomorrow 2 p.m. Eastern time? Yes or no? Good. Okay. Thanks then. Let's meet tomorrow at 7 p.m. again. Good. Thank you. Bye. Good night.